Leaders of the main Dutch political parties have begun formal negotiations to form a new governing coalition following one of the closest parliamentary elections in recent history. The process, taking place inside the House of Representatives, marks the first steps toward establishing a new government after weeks of tight results and political uncertainty. In The Hague, party leaders arrived at the lower house of parliament throughout the morning. Among them was Rob Jetten, leader of the centrist D66 party, who emerged as the election's narrow winner. Jetten's entry was followed by Geert Wilders, the far-right leader of the Party for Freedom, Dilan Yesilgoz, head of the Conservative People's Party for Freedom and Democracy, VVD, and Jesse Klaver, the newly elected chairman of the GroenLinks PvdA alliance, a merger between the Dutch Green Left and Labour parties. Inside the meeting hall, the atmosphere was formal but measured. Cameras captured moments of civility, including a brief handshake between Wilders and Jetten, signalling a willingness to engage despite deep ideological divides. The discussions are being mediated by an appointed negotiator tasked with exploring coalition options acceptable to multiple factions. After the session began, Geert Wilders, known for his nationalist stance and outspoken criticism of immigration policy, addressed the press. He said, "The probability of us receiving nearly 30,000 more votes is quite low. That's why I supported the D66 choice, and I also congratulate Mr. Jetten." Wilders' statement was seen as a rare conciliatory note toward his political rival, reflecting an acceptance of the election outcome and an acknowledgement of the D66 victory. For Rob Jetten, the election result has opened the door to a potential centre-left coalition, a grouping that could unite progressive and moderate forces in Parliament. He said, yes. Well, I think it's an obvious combination. Centre-left coalition with a large majority in the chamber, which allows us to start working on many issues. Jetten's remarks underscored his ambition to move quickly toward a functioning coalition capable of addressing pressing domestic concerns, from housing and energy reform to the Netherlands' climate commitments under European Union frameworks. However, the negotiations have already exposed the familiar tensions between Liberal and Conservative blocs. Dilan Yesilgoz, leader of the VVD, drew a firm line against working with the Green Left alliance. She stated no, because it wasn't about Mr. Frans Timmermans.
It was about the programme defended by GroenLinks. It's the complete opposite of what the VVD considers best for the Netherlands, and we want real solutions.
That's why we repeated throughout the campaign, my friends, choose between the left and the centre-right. Her statement reaffirmed the VVD's traditional preference for fiscally conservative pro-business coalitions and hinted at the party's reluctance to support any governing structure dominated by left-leaning agendas. Yesilgoz's comments also emphasised that the campaign debate had been centred less on individual personalities and more on diverging policy visions, particularly regarding climate spending, taxation and welfare expansion. Representing the newly merged GroenLinks PvdA alliance, Jesse Klaver signalled readiness to cooperate if it would expedite the formation of a stable government. He said it's really up to her, Dilan Yesilgoz, leader of the VVD, to decide. I think the Netherlands needs a new government quickly. We are very clear the Netherlands needs help moving forward. GroenLinks PvdA is ready to do that. It can be done from the opposition, but also from the coalition. Klaver's remarks reflected a pragmatic tone, offering flexibility to either support a coalition directly or back it conditionally from opposition benches. Analysts noted that this approach aims to portray GroenLinks PvdA as constructive partners in a fragmented parliament where cooperation will be essential. The Left Alliance has gained momentum under Klaver's leadership, presenting itself as a force for progressive policy reform, particularly in climate action, healthcare and education. Yet, the prospect of a broad coalition remains uncertain, as ideological gaps between the left, centre and right persist. Overseeing the proceedings was Martin Bosma, President of the Dutch House of Representatives. At the conclusion of the initial meeting, Bosma announced an important procedural decision. He stated, "I have just concluded a meeting with all the party leaders. There is a broad consensus in favour of appointing one scout, and that is Mr. Wouter Koolmees of D66. The appointment of a scout, known in Dutch political practice as an independent mediator, marks a formal step in coalition building. The scout's task is to consult all parliamentary factions and draft an advisory report on potential governing combinations. Bosma's statement confirmed that former D66 Minister Wouter Koolmees will lead this phase, signalling confidence in his ability to navigate the complex political terrain. The recent parliamentary election in the Netherlands produced one of the tightest results in years. Rob Jetten's D66 narrowly outpaced Geert Wilders' PVV, with both parties securing substantial but not majority representation. The fragmented outcome has forced party leaders to explore multi-party arrangements, a familiar scenario in Dutch politics, where proportional representation often results in coalition governments. The D66 party, traditionally centrist and pro-European, campaigned on themes of sustainable growth, digital innovation and international cooperation. The PVV, led by Wilders, emphasised immigration control, national sovereignty and scepticism toward European Union policies. The VVD, once the dominant force under former Prime Minister Mark Rutte, is recalibrating under Yesilgoz's leadership, seeking to maintain influence while defending its market-oriented policies. GroenLinks PvdA, under Jesse Klaver, presented itself as a rejuvenated social democratic movement advocating for social equality and aggressive climate policy. These ideological contrasts are now at the heart of the negotiations, with each party vying to shape the next government's agenda while managing internal expectations. In numerical terms, any viable coalition will require at least 3 or 4 parties to command a parliamentary majority. Early discussions have centred on whether a centre-left bloc led by D66 could include the GroenLinks PvdA alliance, possibly with the support of smaller centrist parties such as ChristenUnie or Volt. However, this would likely exclude both the PVV and VVD, a scenario that could deepen polarisation across the political spectrum. On the other hand, a centre-right arrangement involving the VVD, D66 and possibly the Christian Democrats could offer stability, but would require concessions on social policy and climate commitments that remain contentious. Wilders' PVV, despite its strong showing, faces isolation due to its hardline positions on immigration and its criticism of Islam, positions that most mainstream parties continue to reject as incompatible with coalition governance. Political analysts in The Hague note that forming a coalition could take weeks, if not months. The Netherlands has a long history of protracted negotiations, and the balance of personalities as much as policies will shape the final outcome. International observers are closely watching the outcome as the Netherlands plays a crucial role within the European Union, NATO and international trade frameworks. A D66-led coalition could reinforce Dutch commitments to EU climate goals, technological cooperation and fiscal discipline. A coalition leaning rightward, anchored by VVD or PVV influence, might prioritise border control, national industry protection and a more cautious approach to EU integration. Economically, the Netherlands faces key challenges, including housing shortages, inflationary pressures and public concern over migration and energy prices. Both Jetten and Yesilgoz have pledged to pursue pragmatic solutions, though their proposed policies diverge sharply. D66 favours greater public investment and environmental spending, while VVD emphasises market competitiveness and tax stability. Footage from the parliamentary meeting showed leaders maintaining a professional tone throughout the opening round. While ideological divisions remain clear, the meeting underscored a shared understanding of urgency, the need for a functioning government capable of passing budgets and restoring confidence among voters. The image of Wilders and Jetten sitting side by side, once seen as political opposites, conveyed an effort to project unity in a deeply divided chamber. Meanwhile, Jesse Klaver's calm engagement and Dilan Yesilgoz's firm rhetoric illustrated the spectrum of Dutch politics in 2025, from progressive renewal to conservative defence. Following the appointment of Wouter Koolmees as coalition scout, consultations are expected to continue over the coming days. He will hold private meetings with all parliamentary leaders to assess their willingness to cooperate and outline feasible combinations. His findings will then be submitted to the Speaker of the House for discussion and approval. If consensus emerges, the next phase will involve the appointment of a formateur, the official tasked with assembling the cabinet. That process traditionally goes to the leader of the largest party in the intended coalition, in this case, Rob Jetten. However, this step depends entirely on the success of Koolmees' initial consultations. The start of coalition talks signals a test of resilience for the Dutch parliamentary system, often praised for its stability, yet criticised for its slow pace. The involvement of figures like Wilders, Yesilgoz, Klaver and Jetten reflects the country's broad ideological diversity, a microcosm of the shifting political landscape across Europe, where populism, centrism and green politics increasingly compete for influence. At the core of these discussions lies a fundamental question: how to reconcile economic pragmatism, social inclusion and environmental responsibility in one coherent agenda. Each party brings a distinct vision, and the coalition that emerges will determine the Netherlands' direction on issues from immigration to climate leadership for years to come. As negotiations continue in The Hague, all eyes remain on the coalition talks led by Rob Jetten's D66. With Wouter Koolmees now appointed as scout, the coming weeks will reveal whether Dutch party leaders can bridge their divisions and form a stable government capable of steering the country through its next political chapter.